I have finally, and I mean finally, have beaten the GTA trilogy. That would be Grand Theft Auto 3, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, and San Andreas. And I did it without any cheat codes. So I'm going to give you guys a quick recap on all of those experiences I got from those 3 games and what do I really think about those games. I'm going to also talk about how do I think those games fare today. Like, what do they look like today? Now, back then, we know what they were. They were some of the best games we could ever have. Now, I know most of y'all done already beat those games. Y'all probably beat them way back in the day. And I played them back in the day, got a lot of nostalgia moments with them. But I was like 7 or 8 when the first one came out. So there was no way I was beating any of those games at that time span. I just didn't have the patience, the acumen. I just wasn't ready to do it. Before I get into the recap, understand this is also the definitive editions. These aren't the original editions on PS2 and Xbox and things. This is the definitive edition. So there are some upgrades in it. But still, we're going to keep it true to the essence of the game. Starting off with GTA 3 Definitive Edition. Now, while playing this time around, it was hard to not reflect back on the good old nostalgia moments that I had from growing up as a kid. I remember watching my older brother play it. Me and my little brother, we tried to play it. We didn't do well, but we would play it and steal cars and all that good stuff. Now, here I am today as an adult, and that stuff is still fun. The open world experience, finding all the little secret packages and all of that stuff is still fun. And then, as I'm playing it and I'm hearing the characters talk, obviously the main character does not talk at all. But the other characters, you're like, damn, I recognize that voice. I recognize that voice. So the casting was great. The casting was funny. Like every GTA game, the radio stations that play as you're driving around are hilarious. And the very beginning of the game is the strongest point of GTA 3. And the reason I say that is even though I'm one of the guys who played GTA as a little kid, now as an adult, it still felt fresh. It still felt fun. Right? GTA 3 had a way, this definitive edition had a way of allowing it to feel like the same experience, but just kind of a 2.0 upgrade, especially with the graphics and the color schemes and things like that. Also, in the beginning of the game, the missions feel fresh, right? Because you're doing this on this mission, you might be going to pick up Misty, right? You're going to pick up Misty, and then another mission, you're going to Chinatown to make a hit. But that's where the game starts to halt. Where GTA 3 begins to struggle is that the missions become really, and I mean really, really, really repetitive. So much so that after a certain point in the game, you're doing the same thing. Like literally the same thing. It becomes shoot this person or catch this person. It just becomes the same thing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, it was still fun because the nature of the game is hard to not have fun when you're playing it. The open world concept, you go to different cities, you unlock different cities, and the trademark of GTA is betrayal. You get your lick back at the very end. What GTA 3 struggles the most for me is there was no connection for me. I didn't feel connected to the main character at all. It might be because he didn't talk, but I didn't feel connected to him at all. All he did was head nod, right? That's all he did. They would tell him go do this, he would just look at him and do this and walk off. He screamed every so often when he died or some shit like that, but I didn't feel connected to him. So that was probably the biggest struggle for GTA 3, amongst probably some other mechanical issues that I really don't care to mention, is that I didn't feel connected to the main character. Like his story didn't feel right. It didn't move me. It was like, oh, you were a criminal stealing and she betrayed you, and then you killed her at the end. End of story. When GTA 3 initially came out, it definitely was an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 probably because it was so revolutionary in what it did. But playing the definitive edition back, and I'm like, you know what? This is probably more like a 6 out of 10. There are definitely some things, some mechanical issues they could have fixed, some storyline staleness that plagued it that they could have fixed as well. But overall, it's still what it is. It's still one of the most revolutionary games that's ever come out that changed the way we play games and changed the way that games are created. So shout out to GTA 3, but that was my experience. Next up, we got Vice City. Now, Vice City Definitive Edition, I have the least experience with Vice City as a whole. Like that was the one that I didn't play almost at all as a child. Like I have no recollection of how any of the missions go, who the characters are, any of that. So everything I did this time around was completely fresh. The first upgrade that Vice City does over GTA 3 is that number one, the colors. The color scheme is amazing. The game is brighter. It feels brighter, right? It feels brighter. The main character is talking. That's amazing. It was fun. Like I can honestly say I had a lot of fun doing the first several missions of Vice City. like traditional GTA games, Vice City starts off with betrayal, but after the betrayal, you go around, you start realizing that the betrayal within Vice City goes deeper, because he was betrayed long before the initial betrayal we see on screen actually happened. One of my favorite aspects of playing Vice City Definitive Edition was that I actually felt connected to the characters that were there. Like, I understood their motives. I understood how they thought. I understood why they were frustrated. I understood why they were nervous. I started to understand things. And to me, that was the biggest upgrade over GTA 3, was that the characters actually have character. Another element that I really enjoyed about Vice City was that now we're talking about buying assets. That we're buying assets and the assets are paying us. This was a great thing for young kids to get into, actually, to get us into thinking about buying assets very early. Obviously, I didn't play it as a kid. I played it as an adult, but still the same concept. So I really enjoyed that. That was just another element that made and it was relevant to the story. It was another element of just buying assets and making money from your assets, which was a dope thing as well. With those amazing pros, there is a con that comes with that. Because you have to buy assets, there becomes a point in the game where the game will pretty much halt until you buy the right assets, until you have the assets to continue the main storyline on. Now, while on the surface, that's not necessarily a negative. The problem is, if you have history beating GTA, like you played GTA 3, or in my case, you played a bunch of them growing up, and now you're playing in Definitive Edition, you have no idea that that's actually a part of the storyline. So you'll go through the game, just beating the game, and then all of a sudden, you're at a halt. And due to this is the really negative part, not necessarily a negative part, but a critical part. You end up grinding to make the money to buy the assets that you have to continue the story on. Because I was going around, I didn't use any cheat codes. I was going around buying my armor, my vest. I was buying houses. I didn't know that you needed to buy the property. And I could imagine that a lot of people back in the day didn't know that either. Because they didn't know that, the game became a lot longer than it needed to be. And they ended up grinding, probably doing taxi missions, ambulance missions, police missions, just to make enough money to buy the right clubs and buy the right assets to continue the main storyline. Overall, Vice City is the clear upgrade over GTA 3. The game looks better, the game feels better, the characters, you feel more connected to the characters. You understand their nuances, you understand their story, you understand their motives, their wants, their needs a little bit better, especially the main character. And I think where Vice City really turned it up was buying the properties and the assets. I think that was a really great thing. I just think they fell short with making that clear in the beginning of the game that you have to start buying assets at some point. Because up until that point, it wasn't clear to me, and I'm an adult. Maybe I was just rushing through it though. In the last game of the trilogy, we have San Andreas. Now, San Andreas I spent the most time with growing up. It also is the much longer game of the three. And it took me about 25 hours to complete the Definitive Edition. San Andreas has the strongest storyline of the three. It immediately starts off with heartbreak with the passing of CJ's mom. Following that, it goes around with you earning your respect back in the hood and figuring out what actually happened to mom. And then you figure out that the two of your closest homeboys betrayed you. And then it's corrupt cops. There was a lot of depth to the story. The story of San Andreas is actually really good. And playing the Definitive Edition, it felt just the same. It felt amazing the whole way through in terms of the story. Then you got some other great aspects of the game. Building relationships, girlfriends, right? Dating, right? That's a part of the game. Territories, earning respect. All those things are great aspects of the game. GTA San Andreas has one major flaw to me though. Like, I'm talking about one really major flaw. And that major flaw is filler. There were so many missions on there that we did not have to do. There was way too. That game, I think they say the main story is about 36 hours or something like that. If you take out the filler, that main game is like 27, 26 hours. Like, you take a good chunk of time off. There's a lot of missions on there that's like, why am I ever doing this? However, what I can say is there is a set of missions you do with a guy named Torino. And Torino, at the very end, the very last mission you do with Torino is my favorite mission. He says, I want you to go get your brother. He frees your brother from prison. So there's feel-good moments in this game as well. There's a lot, like San Andreas has, of the three games, has the most in-depth story, bar none. Because there's so many layers to the story, and there's even more layers they could have explored as well, but there were so many layers to the story that it was hard to not enjoy, even as a grown man today. With all the brilliance of GTA San Andreas, the filler of it, that's what makes it, it can drag. it can drag. You find yourself doing missions for truth. You find yourself doing missions for all kinds of characters, and you're like, bro, you have nothing to do with my overall objective. Why am I doing this mission? Overall, each of these games, GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas, at their heights, they were all like 8 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s, because the size of the games, the size of the maps, all of those things, the interaction between the characters, all of those things. But I think when you look back on it and you play it today, with all the information that we have currently, each of those games are probably like anywhere from a 6 out of 10 to like a 7 out of 10. They're all still very enjoyable. The nostalgia is undeniable. However, the repetitiveness of the games and some of those filler missions, you'd be like, bruh, I could definitely live without this mission. But I enjoyed it. And due to me beating these games in a week and a half time span, I would not be playing any GTA-like games for at least another 2 or so months. I'm not going back in that direction. I'm burnt out on that type of game right now.